Hi, everyone. Welcome to ACT.tv's Progressive Movement coverage. I'm Julianna Forlano. Joining me today, Dr. Harriet Fraad. It's difficult to think of a moment in history that has been more uncertain than this one. Will we finally get to do something meaningful to disrupt the cycle of systemic racism that has targeted communities of color since America's founding? Will the banks crash? Will we heal from a global pandemic that continues to ravage our most vulnerable communities? Will our children be able to have access to education as we've known it? What about the food supply? Back on the program today is Dr. Harriet Fraad, who gives us the tools to deal with uncertainty. Dr. Fraad is a mental health counselor, hypnotherapist in practice in New York City. She's a founding member of Second-Wave Movement. She is a regular guest on this program right here, and I'm very happy to have her. She's also the host of the podcast Capitalism Hits Home. And also, Harriet, you have a brand new podcast that you've been working with. What's the title of that one?
It's called It's Not Just in Your Head, and I do it with Max Golding.
Ah, very good. Alana, get that into the script. It's Not Just in Your Head with Max Golding. Harriet, thank you so much for being on the program today.
Glad to be here and glad to talk about people's suffering, because the first thing you need to do is acknowledge what's coming down, which is that we're all in the unsafe hands of a totally narcissistic president who cares nothing of our welfare and only of his own reelection. And that makes us feel very frightened because we're in unsafe hands. The second thing that we have to face is that we are unsettled, that we are displaced, that we don't know where our safe place is because we're not safe in the outside world the way we used to be, and our routines are all disrupted. And for those people whose children are home, and this is particularly true of women, in addition to all the other responsibilities for the domestic maintenance of the home and the emotional care of the people in it and the sexual demands, there's also the demand to be present for one's children all the time because they can't have friends over either, and also to teach them when often they don't want to be taught by their parents. And
that's my concern. How am I going to teach her schooling? My own daughter is very much a fight the power girl, and right now she's, as I've said before, she sees me as the power. So
exactly, and you are the power.
And I don't know how I'm going to actually educate a child who is just internally structured like that. And my husband and I are the only ones who are kind of allowed to do that. It's
terrible for her.
It's a concern.
And she needs the socialization of her peers, and she's not getting that.
Harriet, they are opening up some outdoor camp things in New York. And I was thinking about sending my own daughter to one of these, and yet they're following these CDC guidelines, which I would think is probably good, but yet that makes the kids stay 6 feet apart from each other, wear masks, wear gloves. I'm concerned that that's actually going to do more harm than good in terms of their ability to socialize.
I think it'll do more good than harm, because better to socialize under constrained circumstances than not at all. And I think it also has to be done because I think you and all the other mothers and some fathers who are taking responsibility need a break. So there's two parties that need relief. And I think your children need the kind of running space that's very hard in an apartment. And even in a little backyard, running alone is not so exciting as running around and screaming with other children. So I think that's very important.
So this, the political moment that we're in, I don't want to co-opt the whole discussion about my own personal childcare. I mean, I would like to do that, but I feel a sense of service that I need to do to other people and their uncertainties. There's the pandemic that's uncertain. How are we going to finish that? There's the economic condition and the social unrest. How can what would you suggest people to do to just manage their own uncertainties with whatever they're dealing with? How it seems like being a little anxious is part of a normal response.
It is. And one of the most important things, well, there's two most important things. One of them is connecting with other people on Zoom or Google Chats or Facebook, whatever you want to do, but actually having time allotted to talk to other adults. And if you're lucky to have a partner to whom you can talk, making sure to make time to talk to your partner. And if you can take a walk, however masked, in the park, do that. There's two grounding things that I think are essential. One is connecting with other people. The other is connecting with yourself. If you meditate, meditate. In any case, do some kind of physical exercise routine every day. Try to structure your day,
It's
even
so
though
hard
your
in
day
a
is
small space.
dislodged.
I've run into people and we're both like, yeah, you know, you can see the weight coming on because of the, you know, lack of ability to be mobile as much as you would.
Right. Well, Brett Larkin, among other yoga teachers, has very good yoga workouts of all different kinds that you can do in a small space, which is important because you can't go striding around a small space where there's other people in it.
Yeah.
And also carve that time aside. When I used to exercise, I would let my children know, come to me if you are bleeding profusely, because
Otherwise, out.
otherwise, this is my time and it's sacrosanct.
And I
And
think
so,
that's a good lesson for children to be able to, then they'll learn that they can say, this is my time.
exactly. And then they'll learn to respect that you are a person and that you too have needs. And you're not just a fountain of giving, but you need to replenish yourself. The water has to come into the fountain in order to spout out. And I think so, those two things, connection with other people and a structure including exercise. So there's really three. Structure your time. I also think that since many of the public school videos that they send out really are lousy and kids can't focus on them, if you have the ability to read to your child, to help your child make up stories and then read them, stories about how they feel, what the day is like, whatever they want to read, whatever they want to say, and then write it down in as careful a printing as you can and show it to your child and read it together. Even if your child can't read, they'll get to know what they said. If your child has a dream, make a dream book where the child tells it to you, then you act it out with your child, and then you write it down and read your dream books.
I have to say, I'm very happy. I'm very grateful for PBS Kids right now because
Yes.
the quality of the educational cartoons that there are, you know, I feel, I don't like plopping my kids in front of the TV as a babysitter, but sometimes you need them to be engaged otherwise. And I'd hate, you know, when she's watching, I hate to say this, but when she's watching like Walt Disney, Mickey Mouse stuff, she's getting programmed in a way that it's, you know, I hate to see what's going to come back to her. When she's watching Nature Cat, she comes and tells me about bioluminescence and volcanoes, you know, so there is something to be grateful for in terms of PBS, you know, public broadcasting.
Absolutely. So you want
so
to
for
have
people who
public.
don't have kids, oh, you know, and I don't want to. Okay, so you gave us basically the big three: make time to connect with yourself, make time to connect with others in these times of uncertainty, and do some physical exercise to help your body
And structure
regulate
your
stress.
day. It's very important to create a structure because your job doesn't structure you outside your house. The ordinary things of life that create a structure for you around which you plan and you kind of have moorings are gone. So you have to create a structure in order to be safe. And
When it
that's
comes
much harder.
when it comes to the communal sense of dealing with uncertainty, obviously we have people in the streets, you know, protesting, expressing themselves, etc. Do you believe that this is a positive, you know, this has got to be a positive for mental health, I'm assuming?
It does, because one of the worst things for mental health is isolation. The second is hopelessness, which actually leads to death. There was a set of studies called the Case and Deaton studies, where they found that white women in the South were dying much faster than Black women. And of course, our whole mortality, Americans are dying sooner because you have to have hope to live. If you don't, you kind of invite the diseases that are circulating around to come to you. Medicare bills go way down when elders live together and have joint activities. And so you need to have hope. And one of the things that gives you hope is you're not alone watching horrible things on your screen.
I
You're
just spoke to my
reminded
mother,
others.
who is alone, and I said, "How are you?" She just seems so anxious, and I said, "How are you doing? What'd you do yesterday?" She said, "Well, I watched a movie, then I stayed up all night watching CNN." I'm like, "Oh no, do not
Right.
do that," you know.
Connect with
But for
other
people who
people.
that's their only window out into the world, the media is their window into the world. So it's a catch.
It is, but there's different kinds of media. And one of the things that's very important is to connect however you can. You can get on the internet and sign petitions. You can communicate with other people and urge them into protest. You can write letters, because one of the things that empowers people and gives people hope is being active against the oppression that they suffer and not passively acceding. That's very psychologically poisonous. You have to feel that you can connect and that there is hope, and that you're part of that hope and you're part of that energy. And those demonstrations give people hope and energy. And the police are often terrible and brutal. And so you also have to be careful. And when you feel the energy change, then kind of disappear. When I go on demonstrations, I try to look as bourgeois as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so that if I feel that the police are coming, I try to look like I'm going shopping instead
I
of
did that and I got out of a beating. Yeah,
demonstrating.
I don't know. I think that's another, uh, that's another privilege, right? That
Yes, it
not
is.
everyone has.
It
Yeah.
is. And I think the most important thing is not letting yourself get hopeless. And demonstrations are very healthy. First of all, they may affect change. We have to notice that when Eric Garner died and couldn't breathe, Chuck Schumer didn't say anything. Nancy Pelosi didn't say anything. Certainly the Republicans said nothing. Corporations that are now suddenly concerned, even though they're not helping their workers unionize and get together and be powerful, they are all feeling like, uh-oh, start to act concerned.
Right.
And that's only because people are in the street.
I find that corporate concern makes me violently ill, especially when it's lip service concern and not, they're like, click on, why were they not concerned before? Jumping onto concern right now is just, I don't know. I'm happy they're concerned if they're going to do something about it, but it does seem disingenuous from, as I've said 100 times, Amazon or places like that.
Well, they're concerned to get an image, and they're not concerned for people's lives. Mm-hmm. So that Walmart did give some money, which accounted to about a nickel of their fortune. Bezos did the same thing, which accounts for about a nickel of his fortune. But it sounds like a lot of money because they have so much money. Both work actively against the unionization of their workplaces, which would actually empower people and empower Black and brown and white people together. Martin Luther King said the best anti-poverty program is unionization. In the union, we're all on the same team. And it's an antidote to racism. So here they are working against the antidote to well-being and racism by fighting the union. And at the same time, they're making a much publicized contribution, which, although a lot, is minimal from the richest man in the world and the richest family in the world, the Waltons.
Yes, tokenism as a token, as opposed to a structural renegotiation that might actually help.
Exactly, that's perfectly said. It's a token. But one of the things that there's two things that people can get really inspired by. One is, whoa, all these people have to give us tokens.
Yes.
What do you know?
Yeah.
We have power. And the other thing is, they are pressuring us to go back to work, even if they kill us, because they can't make their money without our work. Our labor makes the world go round and makes this society function. And even though people like Hassert, the economic advisor of Trump, calls workers capital stock, as if they're cattle, without us, they can't function. And we have to understand that we have the key, that our Labor Party does. Our labor is the strength. And that should inspire us, so that I think at the same time as people are feeling discouraged because the structure of their lives is smashed, and because our supreme leader, president, is utterly irresponsible and not testing, which is the precursor to healing, we do have power, and we are getting out there, and we are speaking up in ways that are physical, on demonstrations, and in ways that are not, on writing letters, on signing petitions, on calling people and reminding them to do the things they need to do to change this.
Harriet, we have just a few minutes and I want to do a couple more things here with you. One that I sprung on you at the last second, but first I just wanted to bring some of the quotes in that are coming in from our stream chat. Mind you, if you have a question for Dr. Fraad, if you're watching on Facebook or on our Twitch channel, put them in the comments section and I will pass them along. Pragmatic Anarchist says that labor is just a line item in the capitalist spreadsheet. And then our friend Riot Fox over here also says that in terms of self-care, one of the things that this person does is comes onto Twitch for programs like this and to be with friends, because Twitch is really more of your group hangs out in this chat room and then you talk to listen to the chat, talk to the group. But also Riot Fox suggests reading more theory helped this person, like getting an actual understanding of things and talking about it to other people. I think that's really useful.
That's excellent. And there are, there's an excellent article on race by Richard Wolff. Look up Richard Wolff, race. There are articles coming out and videos by Cornel West. Just look up Cornel West interview with Chris Hedges. Also, there are wonderful books by Cornel West that are available and accessible, and by Wolff. And I think it's very important to get a sense that you do understand, because power, one of the sources of power is understanding. So I totally agree with Riot Fox.
Harriet, what is coming up on your podcast this week?
What's coming up is the question of anti-communism and race, and anti-communism and gender, and anti-communism and protest. Because one of the reasons that the United States is the worst of all the developed countries in its handling of COVID and has 40 million people unemployed is that we don't have strong socialist parties here or communist parties that can threaten the capitalists. You better shape up, because we have power. So that in Germany, for example, which is a capitalist country, before COVID, they had 5% unemployment. Now with COVID, they have 6% unemployment. Germany, France, the other European countries all have their economies working because they all guarantee between 70 and 90% of their workers' salaries. And they deny any subsidy to any company that does not retain all employees on the payroll. And then the government will pay that 70 to 90%. But those people are employed. And people have 70 to 90% because they can go out and buy things. And that's very important. That's why the curve of COVID went way up for America and all of Europe. And all of Europe in the developed world is down. Europe and China, and also Vietnam and Singapore and Taiwan and other countries and Scandinavia, whereas we have stayed at the top because they may be capitalist countries, but they're afraid. They can't get away with 40 million people unemployed. So that's why we need to read theory, and we need to see that we need socialist presence like AOC and like Bernie was, and like Jamal Bowman is.
Yeah, how exciting.
The United States, very exciting, and others.
Harriet Fraad, the podcast is called It's Not All in Your Head. You can get it wherever you get podcasts now. I mean, they're all in the same place. They're all in all the same places. Your background looks lovely. I like the ceiling. It's very pretty back there.
It's where I am, but it's called It's Not Just in Your Head. Not All in Your Head is a different podcast. It's not just in your head.
That actually is even better. It's not just in your head. It's out in the actual world. It's the system. And that's the kind of...
Exactly. If you lost your job, it's not a problem internally only. You have problems internally, but the fact that you lost your job is significant.
Harriet, we've come to the end of our segment, and I didn't even get to go to what I wanted half of the segment to be. Oh, there's always so many good things to discuss when you come on. We need a full hour, I think.
Yes. I'm game.
Maybe. Well, just briefly, I want to, is Dean here yet? Alana? If Dean is not here. Oh, Dean is already here. So our next guest is here. So Harriet and I, we spoke about, to a live audience about the Epstein debacle. I don't know what you want to call it. Tragedy, horror. There are a number of words that would fit here. And right now there is a new Epstein documentary being made. I sent a link to Harriet. We'll have to do this segment another time. But briefly, if people do get their eyeballs on that documentary, could you say what you think that's missing there?
Okay. I think this documentary is all into the gory details of what happened to those women, but it doesn't talk about the complicity of people like Aaron Black, of Les Staley, who's now the CEO of Barclays Bank, of Trump, of Clinton, of Dershowitz, and of all the other multi-billionaires who were on video because Jeffrey Epstein was murdered because he had blackmail evidence. All those tapes have disappeared. His top accomplice is somehow unaccounted for, even though she used to have a mail drop until recently in Florida. Hello? Nothing's being done for those people because they are the power elite, and that there's evidence that Jeffrey Epstein was murdered, and he was because he had that blackmail capacity for some of the richest people in the world and our current president and Bill Clinton, as well as Alan Dershowitz and Aaron Black and Les Staley and all these other multi-billionaires who raped children. And that should be emphasized. And it should be emphasized that he got a slap on the wrist, not for some mysterious reason, but because Akuno himself said, this is not my pay grade. It goes way up. In other words, the people who are in charge don't want this man exposed. That's why he got a 13-month sentence in effect, and he got off 6 days a week for 12 hours each, where he got to abuse other girls.
Ugh, horrible. We'll talk more about this as this documentary comes out and people forget to say the thing that you are brave enough to say here on this show. So I appreciate you. I appreciate the work that you do. And I've missed seeing you. Every time I see you, I'm like, oh, my friend.
Yes, I feel the same way.
Yeah. Harriet Fraad, you can, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I understand that you have another guest and that
I know.
technology was a mess. So here we are.
I know this happened to us more than once. We're looking into it.
Yes.
You're watching Act TV. I'm Julianna Forlano. We've been speaking with a feminist activist, hypnotherapist, and psychotherapist, as well as podcast host, Dr. Harriet Fraad. You can follow her at Harriet Fraad, HarrietFraad on Twitter. Harriet, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And you can join me mainly by my podcast, harrietfraad.com. Okay,
Perfect.
goodbye and thank you.
Thank you so much.